Now, on Monday, Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz announced that he would be stepping down and possibly looking into public service. Well, you know what that means. He might be running for president. I know, right? But that is the speculation. So here we go again. Now, the reason there is that speculation is because he came out and said, well, I'm looking into public service and, maybe helping out with, running as a Democrat, stuff like that. And also giving interviews where he starts talking about neoliberal centrist talking points. Now, this is a great example. He's going to go on CNBC's Squawk Box, and he's going to talk about what he fears the Democrats are doing and what he thinks they're doing wrong. Take a look.
So many voices within the Democratic Party are going so far to the left, and I ask myself, how are we going to pay for all these things in terms of things like single payer or people espousing the fact that the government is going to give everyone a job? I don't think that's realistic, and I think we've got to get away from all of these falsehoods and start talking about the truth and not false promises.
We gotta talk about things that we can actually do. Let's not talk about false promises like Medicare for all and free college and a living wage. I mean, single payer. How are we going to pay for that? First of all, this guy has no idea what he's talking about, right? So he's a rich CEO. He probably has insurance, the best insurance in the world. He's never had to worry about healthcare. Never had to worry about not being able to afford your insurance deductible to go to the doctor, all that stuff. So he's never had a need to actually look into healthcare models that actually help people that aren't wealthy. For example, Denmark, Norway, Finland, the UK, Australia, pretty much every industrialized country has figured out how to have Medicare or a version of Medicare for all, single payer healthcare, which is truly universal, covers everybody, and they figured out how to do it cheaper. I mean, he's asking this question as if nobody's ever figured it out before. In reality, we're the only industrialized nation that does not guarantee healthcare to all of its citizens. We are the anomaly. We're the one that stands out. Everybody else is looking at us like we're barbarians. Oh my God, how do you not have healthcare for everybody? How do you let people die without access to a doctor? What kind of barbarians are you? Like, how backwards is your society? Well, that's a great question. But instead, the question that Howard Schultz and neoliberals like to ask is, well, how can we pay for that? Well, you know what? We've actually figured out how to pay for it. And there are numerous studies that actually do show that what we spend on healthcare right now is actually more than what we would spend on single-payer healthcare. I mean, look, here's the thing, right? We spend right now more money on healthcare to cover less people than any other country, right? Per capita, right? We spend twice as much per capita as the UK does. Per capita, per person. So, look, we get less out of that deal. We actually get screwed, while insurance companies, which are basically a useless middleman that's only there to skim profit off the top. Well, that's the whole point of insurance companies. Skim profit off the top. When we really could be just dealing directly or having the government deal directly with the doctors and setting prices. That would actually save us money. That's what Medicare is supposed to do. That's what Medicare does right now. That's why it has a really low overhead of cost and is actually incredibly popular. You ask anybody over 65, hey, would you rather go back to a private healthcare system? They would laugh in your face. No, I love Medicare. Get your goddamn government hands off my healthcare. That's what they would tell you. Even Republicans love this idea. In fact, a lot of Republicans also love Medicare for all. So, look, instead of asking how we can afford to have Medicare for all, we should be asking if we can afford the status quo. And of course, I think the answer to that would be hell no. We cannot afford this. Now, look, of course, unfortunately, Mr. Schultz is all about the status quo, and he's siding with Republicans even because he thinks that our real problem is we're too generous.
I think the greatest threat domestically to the country is this $21 trillion debt hanging over the cloud of America and future generations. And the fact that interest rates are going up, we're going to be paying close to over $400 billion in interest expense, which I think is the number one or number two issue in terms of federal expense to the country. The only way we're going to get out of that is we've got to grow the economy, in my view, 4% or greater, and then we have to go after entitlements.
We have to go after entitlements. He's going to come for your Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. That's what this guy believes in. Because he thinks that those things are the biggest drivers to our debt. Now, you know what the biggest drivers to our national debt are? Tax cuts for the rich and military spending. We spend over $700 billion a year on just the military. And again, those tax cuts, Trump's tax cuts cost us $1.4 trillion, $1.5 to $1.7 trillion over the next 10 years. You know how much that would pay, you know what that would actually pay for? It would pay for single payer. It would pay for free college easily. And it could also pay for infrastructure. We could rebuild our infrastructure. And guess what? That means jobs. So we could actually pay for real things if we stopped giving so many tax cuts to the rich. And of course, that would mean that people like Howard Schultz would have to pay a little bit more in taxes for us to be able to do those things. And of course, that's not what he would want to do. Look, the greatest threat to our, domestically, to our country is not entitlements and debt. No, it's greed. It's the greed of people like Howard Schultz. Taking what little poor the poor actually have with one hand while taking enormous tax cuts in the other. The levels of income inequality, economic inequality, that is why we cannot grow above 3% as an economy. Nobody at the bottom has any money anymore. All that money is concentrated at the top. And of course, Trump's economic policies are basically, number one, a punishment for the poor, and number two, a way to funnel all this money to the rich. 83% of the benefits of Trump's tax cuts went to the wealthiest 1%. And during the Obama years, in the so-called recovery, most of the gains, nearly all of the gains from that so-called economic recovery went right to the rich. We bailed out Wall Street. We screwed over Main Street. You know how much people actually in the last year saw their incomes rise by? About 2.7%. Corporations and the rich, they saw $1.5 to $1.7 trillion in savings. Who's really benefiting from these economic policies? From neoliberals and conservatives. Well, if you're a regular working person, it ain't you. Look, this guy, Howard Schultz, is an establishment dream candidate. And if he's beloved by the establishment, well, then you know he's bad for the working class. But I don't think Democrats are stupid enough, the party, to actually support a run from this guy. Because, look, if he run and he somehow got the nomination, well, then here comes Trump 2020. You can be rest assured that Donald Trump's going to win another term. Hopefully, Schultz does not, and the Democrats get smart and run a real progressive. That is the only way we're going to beat Donald Trump, is if we actually do Medicare for all, if we do free college, if we do a $15 living wage indexed to inflation, if we do all these the job guarantee, these are the policies that people want. And these are the policies that we could do if we actually had the political will to do them. Don't let people like Schultz mislead you into thinking that we cannot afford it. We can if we get our priorities straight. And if we stop electing neoliberal conservatives. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.